explode. Look at the
Loud. And that's the third out.
What's up, guys? This is Bird Music, and today we're going to be unlocking the Arc M1 Assault Frame for the Arc M1. And in order to unlock this thing, we had to complete the Season 2 Week 4 challenges. And I got to say, I'm excited to unlock this attachment because the Arc M1 is probably one of the worst launchers in the game. However, the attachment looks like it could actually make it very good. If we look at the pros and cons of the attachment, it gives us a crossbar ADS. It also increases the fire rate. It makes the explosion radius better. It also helps with our mobility and ADS speed. And the only con is that it slows down the projectile speed. Now, if you guys have used the Arc M1, you already know this launcher is pretty horrible. It's really good against streets. However, it's, pretty terrible against players. It's even though I'm shooting at the firing range, I mean, you can't actually kill the dummies. But it does have killing potential against other players. It's just that you're probably going to die before you get the shot off, unless you're playing against a bunch of noobs. So I'm really, really curious to see if this attachment is really going to help out the Arc M1 or if it's, going to be true.
Willie McGee.
Swing and a miss. He gets marched on 3 pitches. The 0-2. He struck him out.
There's the swing and a miss.
Just not able to catch up to that velocity.
And in the second is Burns.
Hard ground ball, base 9.
So his first at bat as a Dodger has knocked in at least one. He's knocked in 2 with a double to put the Dodgers in front. With this bullpen struggling the way that it is. On 3 pitches, he strikes out Sable. On a 1-1 pitch, Kennedy. Pushes in through the right side, off the glove of the diving Ritter. Call scores, and the line keeps on moving. Foul tip into the glove. Strike 3. Got him swinging. Sort of the play, brought in the first in the game. Number 8 hitter Dalton Varsho strikes out.
So runners at the corners. Nobody out.
Up to Yastrzemski. Right side, Freddie Freeman knocks it down, feeds to Nelson.
Short, Dela Cruz.
His first
Off balance speed, there's one. They get the out.
And he gets Correa.
Don't get ahead in the count. You can forget about having any success against him.
The 1-0. On a line out towards center. Friedel has a beat on it. And there's 2 down. 1 down. Ian Happ, the next Cub to hit. Cruising on the mound right now, but a dangerous hitter here in this spot. A guy with some slug to him. And a foul ball. Here comes the 0-1.
And he's drives
Big swing and a miss.
We'll be looking at it now. Taking down swinging, 1 gone in this inning.
Way
inside.
inside.
Change up, did he go? He did. Strike 3. Another 2-2. Got him.
He's alive.
Heath Hembry puts up a 0 in his first inning with the Dodgers. Vespi to Marisnik. 0 in his first inning with the Dodgers. Vespi to Marisnik.
Got to be careful with a slugger like this because he can turn it into a 3-run game in the blink of an eye.
Way to lay off that fastball up right there. You're looking for something you see well that you can handle, but you also have to keep the discipline so that you're not popping up pitches that are just a little too high. Just not able to catch up to that velocity. In the infield at the corners, don't be surprised to see them come home first and prevent that run from scoring.
Right through there for a strike.
And he looks like 95.
Line into left field, charging. Diving attempt, did he hold on? He did. His payoff to Stassi. Drops over the outside corner to get him.
So runners at the corners, nobody out. Ian Happ up to hit.
Starts his time to the Dodgers with a home run.
Sneaks through, base hit. Run scores easily, and it's 1-0.
3-2
No, no
from
waiting
left
around.
side. That's fair. Wisdom with a tough play. Throwing as he fades away. Williams safe. Go. Got him. Kickham's first K and 2 gone in the 9th inning. Contreras is gone. The change up and chased out of the zone.
And Ian swings through it.
Right there to be chased out of the zone. Right there to strike him out.
Stays alive.
Nice back foot breaking ball. Gets him swinging. And a 1-2-3 Dodger debut.
Way inside,
Just
just out of the way.
center field. Ramos on the run. It's got a chance. And it's gone.
Fights it off.
That's 3. And 8. I saw him with a 1-2. And a fastball tails back in there for strike 3 to finish up. 1 ball, 2 strikes on Adams. There it is. To finish up. 1 ball, 2 strikes on Adams. There it is. The Yankees for best record. Was down on strike. Oh. Swing and a miss. 1 away.
9th pitch of the at-bat. Due net.
A strikeout for Scott to open his time with LA. A strikeout for Scott to open his time with LA. A 2-2 pitch. Flips it into shallow center field where Swanson goes out. Skates to the side. And Bellinger comes on and was calling him off. Sometimes I put it my other bat.
Next for Chicago. Ian
Zana was calling him off. Sometimes I put it my other bat.
The good thing so far is that he hasn't issued any free passes. Unfortunately, they're making pretty good contacts.
The one center something you didn't see yesterday for sure, and maybe something you'd never see.
How about a strike today? 2 gone here in the 8th is now this year. That's a good pitch there to finish off the inning. National.
On the ground, right side. McLean flips it.
A strikeout for Ramirez, and the D-backs started their last out. It could have gone either way. He pitched at a high level for many years after that. His cruises with this highest success rate. Colby Ellsbury did it, and not even AAA.
So important to get ahead of these hitters.
That's one in the air to run back on it is Peralta.
You just want to keep that other team in a position where if they're going to beat you, they're going to have to do it with multiple hits.
Dream big, work hard, and switch to Progressive.
Got him. Ian Happ.
Batting third, the left fielder, number 8, Ian Happ.
Fouls away the first offering. Bush at third. Horner at first with no outs.
We have some news right now. Donald Trump is now claiming that
And he
asking
swings through.
Congress for authorization to go to war with Iran.
Try to shorten up, try to track the ball, block it if you have to, as far as just a late swing that maybe you're not sure about, but some way.
Swing! Ian Happ getting ready to hit. Struck out swinging his first time.
Good slider from
Let's have no one do that again.
Man, George Orwell has never looked more cringe than this. So, as you probably know, as of this video, there is a new adaptation of the George Orwell classic Animal Farm that has been released. And this time, this is actually an animated adaptation that is actually brought to us by Andy Serkis. And not only that, but it also features an all-star cast that features people like Seth Rogen, Glenn Close, Kieran Culkin, Woody Harrelson, and several others. And based on the reactions that people have so far, ever since the trailers were released online, oh boy, this looks like it's on track to be the next movie that everybody is going to love to hate. Safe to say that we all know that when there is a movie that people on the internet and especially on social media are just ready to go and just flat out destroy, they will be absolutely merciless to it. And I feel like in the case of Animal Farm, especially with the bad reception that it got with the trailers, I wouldn't be be surprised if people are ready to go and release their videos and their reviews about how much they hate Animal Farm and how it is one of the worst animated features that we have gotten in recent years. But as for me, however, I'm gonna go and take a completely different approach to this animated adaptation of Animal Farm, to which I will not be bashing, I think, at this adaptation of Animal Farm, to which I will not be bashing it or destroying it or hating it or anything like that. Now, you might think at this point that I'm going to be a complete contrarian and I will go and tell you, well, no, Animal Farm is actually a really good movie. I think Andy Serkis did a great job with it. No. I am not going to go and do any of that, especially with the fact that, well, to be honest, I haven't seen the movie and I honestly have no interest in watching the movie. So in that regards, I cannot go and put my opinion onto the feature. And even though I actually am a fan of the original George Orwell novel, I am going to go and completely skip it out, not necessarily because of the movie itself and that it's really bad. I mean, to be honest, a bad movie hasn't really stopped me from going to watch it and to go and make a review out of it. No, the reason why I'm actually boycotting it is merely because of the distributor of this adaptation of Animal Farm.
Taking this one for the team, perhaps he can stabilize things and the offense can score some runs for him.
0-low. And the leadoff, Ian Happ, the next Cub to hit.
You know, these Cubs doing a good job of putting the ball into play, and that makes things more challenging on the defensive side. The numbers tell us they're averaging more than a hit every inning, and they've only struck out twice, so they keep finding ways to put their bat on the ball.
He makes the grab. Runner tags at second. The relay. He's in. Ian Happ.
Batting third, the left fielder, number 8, Ian Happ.
Hard grounder into the outfield for a knock. In comes the first run of the game. It's 1-0.
Angel Studios. And this is not the first time that I decided to go and completely skip out on an animated feature that was released by Angel Studios, regardless if they were the ones who directly produced it or if all they did was just distribute it. I've also done the same thing before with their other animated releases, such as King of Kings and with David, both of which were released back in 2025. And I just decided, you know what, no, I'm not going to acknowledge their existence, and I'm just going to completely skip out on just doing those reviews. And this will probably be the only time that I will go and fully address Angel Studios in a video, and it's mainly because I owe you all an explanation. Why is it that I'm not going to go and make a review on anything that was released by Angel Studios? And the main reason, if I can be honest with you all, I just cannot help but feel like they are an absolutely shady company. And I'm not just avoiding them because of just, oh, they give me bad vibes. It's not just that. We have seen in their recent history where it honestly feels like their Christian imagery is more so of a mask than something that is actually based on their actual principles and their actual moral values. In a way, they're kind of like the Christians that would actually give the religion a bad name when you look deep into a lot of their practices. And the biggest piece of evidence to that is in regards to the movie that made them a popular name, which is Sound of Freedom. Now, for those of you
So up next for Minnesota, Ryan Dozier. Runner at second, nobody out. 1-2.
Really good take, especially with 2 strikes.
Swing and a miss. 1 down at the plate. Ryan Dozier. He struck out swinging at his first at bat. Tied up here in the early going. That one fouled off. Clips the outside corner and a count 1-2. Ground ball right side. What a stop. And very nicely done. Ryan Dozier, the next to hit.
Forgotten. Sound of Freedom was a movie back released in the summer of 2023.
What the fuck?
So runners at the corners, nobody out. Wyatt Langford. Worm. So runners at the corners, nobody out. Wyatt Langford will hit next.
Low middle.
And the 1-0.
I think ultimately you want to tie him up, get the ball in on the plate so that he can't get the barrel to it and hit it to the outfield.
Fights it off, you'll see another.
Slider. Low outside.
In the air, left field. So runners
Up
at the
next
corners,
for the Rangers,
nobody
the left
out.
fielder,
Wyatt
Wyatt
Langford stepping in for the Rangers.
Slider. Low middle.
That one back. So runners at the corners, nobody out. Wyatt Langford digs in now. Out towards right center field. Myers has a beat on it. He's got it. Runner tagging from third.
Ugh.
And it was noted to be an indie film that really got a lot of attention and it generated a lot of money at the box office. And it was said to be the movie, or at least the first one, that really made Angel Studios a recognizable distributor, and what really got them up there so that they could go and be in the same leagues or be considered on par with some of the other major players such as Disney, Universal, Warner Brothers, Paramount, and so on and so forth. And whenever you hear people talk about Sound of Freedom today, it's mainly because it was the movie that made Angel Studios a recognizable name. Or should I say, it's the only reason why people would ever talk about Sound of Freedom today. Because if we actually do go and discuss about Sound of Freedom, it has actually gotten a lot of negative word of mouth from the majority of people, where most people who have actually seen it have actually stated that it's nothing more but a QAnon propaganda movie, where it tries to go and present itself as a true story that discusses about child trafficking and how one man was able to go and stop them. But many people, including child trafficking experts, have actually stated that it is obvious that a lot of what happened in reality has been heavily altered in order to go and enable QAnon conspiracy theories. And from there, it kind of became a little bit of a culture war kind of thing, where conservatives would go and not only use that to go and heavily enable those types of QAnon conspiracy theories, but at the same time, that they would also go and try to elevate that as like the ultimate conservative movie and a moment for them to go and celebrate because of how much of a success that it was at the box office. And yet, funny enough, the way that it became a box office success is actually another thing that became heavily controversial. Because you see, it's not just through the traditional means in which Sound of Freedom was able to go and get its money. It's actually because of a unique program that Angel Studios created called Pay It Forward, to which they would go and heavily encourage audiences so that they would keep buying tickets and that they would hand it over to strangers so that they could go and watch it for free because, well, the ticket is already bought. All they have to do is just bring their ticket to the movie theater so that they could go and watch the movie. And that right there caused even more controversy, where it showed that the Sound of Freedom's box office success is actually done by means where it feels very suspicious, where there have been accounts of people who would try to go and exploit that pay it forward system, where they would go and buy tickets in bulk so that they would go and rank up the money, basically overinflate the amount of money that the Sound of Freedom would go and get. In fact, there have been evidence and numerous of accounts where they would go and say that Sound of Freedom was immediately sold out in several theaters, and yet in those actual theaters themselves, there would be very few, or some movie theaters would legitimately be straight up empty, because it's more about inflating the numbers more so than actually people to go and see it. And it really does highlight that with the pay it forward system, there have been a lot more people who would buy tickets more so than people who actually went and see it. And if you want the biggest proof that this is actually the case, look at the Sound of Freedom now. Look at the amount of people who would actually go and talk about Sound of Freedom as a movie in itself. And you'll realize that it is virtually non-existent. And that's the thing that I always find to be so strange about Sound of Freedom. It's the fact that this is a movie that is often considered to be a box office smash hit, a huge phenomenon, in fact. Like, some people would even say that it's on par with the other movies released around that time, that it's on that level of a phenomenon, similar to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And yet it is so strange to see how a movie like that would become a big success at that
He's
time.
just
And yet
missing with
to
some
this
pitches
day,
that,
and
I mean,
as I'm
those are,
recording
they're
this, by
not
the way,
strikes,
it's
and
only
that's
been
what you
3
think, oh,
years
good pitch
since
is a
that
strike,
movie was
but
released.
how many times
It
pitchers
left
are trying to tease
zero
the zone, and the
impact
last two
in
pitches that
pop
he's thrown,
culture.
good
You
pitches,
see
but even
nobody,
better
not
takes.
even the conservatives who
Shootout,
say that they
nobody
love
on.
it, would go and actually
That ball,
talk
another
about
2-2
the Sound of
upcoming.
Freedom as a movie. Like, they wouldn't go and talk about the quality of it. They wouldn't discuss about the subject matters of it. They would discuss about literally nothing about it. And that's where it feels like, honestly, the success of Sound of Freedom kind of feels a little bit like a sham. I'm not saying that that they did some illegal things in order to do so. In a way, it kind of feels like Sound of Freedom kind of cheated its way onto success so that Angel Studios could become a recognizable name. And not to mention that with the subject matters that they would go and bring up, and how a lot of that is heavily associated with QAnon conspiracy theories, it does make me wonder, like, okay, if you're going to go and distribute a movie like that, how does that relate to Christianity per se? Like, why is it that a Christian company would really be that interested in spreading stuff like this? Especially when Sound of Freedom has been noted to do more harm than actual good when it comes to the subject matter of child trafficking, where all it does is go and spread misinformation. But then again, some could argue that technically with what we do know now, it is a little bit more accurate if it's about calling out the Trump administration, considering what we know about Trump and what we know about those people in the Epstein files. It's safe to say that I don't think that's necessarily actually so, yeah, it honestly just feels very off with Angel Studios Association with Sound of Freedom. So already, as I said before, that just feels like a very massive red flag right there. And that's not the only Angel Studios thing in which it got a red flag. There's also another project, an animated project also, that honestly doesn't have much to do with Christianity in the first place, but it honestly feels very off that they would be the ones to go and distribute it, and even nowadays is considered one of their biggest shows. And that is in regards to the Tuttle Twins. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Tuttle Twins is an animated series that is distributed by Angel Studios, to which it is based.
Allow that
Tuttle
pitch to work in your
Twins.
favor.
Now, for those of you who don't know, the Tuttle Twins is an animated series that is distributed by Angel Studios, to which it is based on a popular children's book, and their main goal is to go and educate kids about finance and economics, and even sometimes like other things to go and learn, such as history as well. But the big catch, however, is that with the Tuttle Twins, they actually have a very libertarian approach to it. Like, very right-leaning in terms of showing how economics work, a very conservative perspective of how history has been and stuff like that. And for people who have seen it, it really did leave a bad taste in their mouth, because basically, with its libertarian approach, all it's doing is just teaching kids about empathy and how to be a selfish asshole in life. And
really bore down to get it.
I feel free.
Keeps the plate appearance going.
Low inside.
Hit hard to
Hi, I'm
second.
Ryan Reynolds.
Throws to
Welcome.
first.
And this
Two
is
gone
not even
here.
to mention that because of that libertarian approach, you know that those financial advice that they would go and give out, at the very least, the grand majority of them, you know it is absolutely garbage. And one perfect example is that there actually was a recent episode that they put out in which they would go and educate kids about cryptocurrency.
Out of here. Home run, Aaron Judge. This guy belongs in a video game. Oh.
Four-seam fastball.
Stanton comes to the plate with a lead thanks to Aaron Judge. Swings and misses out in front.
Cutter. Low middle.
Goes back to the slider, and it's 0-2.
Middle outside.
Sliders. Jose Caballero, ready to go. Misses with the first pitch. Scared of ya. Now a screamer into the outfield. Hauls it in for the out. Now we see
Batting second,
Nolan
the
Gorman.
second baseman, Nolan Gorman.
Mrs. Freed's pitch.
Like, they want to teach kids how to bring them into the world of crypto and Bitcoin and all that kind of garbage. And the crazy thing is that they actually put out that episode after the crypto bubble burst. So basically, with the Tuttle Twins, they're setting children up for absolute failure. I can guarantee you that there's going to be plenty of libertarians in the future where they will look at their finances and they will see how much in critical debt that they are, in which they will never escape the lower class, and they'll wonder to themselves, why is it that I'm poor? Well, I mean, you could go and ask the Tuttle Twins about that. And I understand maybe those examples are not necessarily enough, and if you want to have more proof, then how about we go and talk about how Angel Studios has a long history of lawsuits. So much so that this even occurred even prior to the existence of Angel Studios itself. And when you do look upon their history of lawsuits and stuff like that, you could...
On the ground to second. Gorman fields it cleanly. One gone here. Austin Wells ready to hit.
Outside.
Early advantage for the pitcher.
Middle inside.
Slides one across the
Sinker.
zone for a strike.
Low middle.
And that one is inside.
Sinker.
You
Low
look
outside.
upon their history of lawsuits and stuff like that, you could tell that
When will
this is a
one come
company
down?
that really
See
does
ya.
prioritize
Home
their
run.
faith
Goodbye,
more
baseball.
so than the law. And a great example is actually prior to the founding of Angel Studios, because before they were even called Angel Studios, they were a company called Vid Angel. And what they offered
Strike three and strikeout number 3.
Batting eighth, the
Anthony
shortstop,
Volpe steps
Anthony
in now for the Yankees.
Volpe.
Four-seam fastball.
Here comes a pitch.
High outside.
Fouls it.
Slider.
The wind,
Low
the kick, the
outside.
pitch. Hit hard, and that gets through.
Slider.
Jose Caballero
Low
at the
middle.
dish with a runner on first. Went with the slider.
Slider.
Relying on that
Middle
pitch
outside.
more than any other. It's 0-2.
Slider. Low middle.
Slider. Strike. Welcome back. It's a 2-run game. Ryan Howard hits leadoff this frame. That's hard hit on the line. That's got extra bases written all over it. Around first, hustling for 2. And one pitch into the inning, it's a leadoff double.
Batting fifth, the third baseman, Scott
So up next to the
Rowland.
dish, Scott Rowland. A perfect smash. Grisham on the move into the alley. Makes a nice running catch. Moves up from second to third, now with 1 out. Mike Napoli in the box with a runner at third. Goes after the cutter but misses. Gloves it on the line. What a play that was. Nick Castellanos steps in. Cutter hits the zone for a strike.
a streaming service in which Christians actually have the power to go and heavily filter out what they feel like is a bit too explicit for them. Like, if they want to go and watch a family film, for example, then they can go and immediately mute or full-on skip out any of the things that they deem to be heavily unchristian. But the problem with Vid Angel is that it had absolutely no regard to copyright whatsoever. And because of that, and they can go and immediately mute or full-on skip out any of the things that they deem to be heavily unchristian. But the problem with Vid Angel is that it had absolutely no regard to copyright whatsoever. And because of that, Vid Angel, or technically Angel Studios, has actually spent years in court against all the major companies like Disney, Warner Brothers, Universal, Paramount, and several others because of copyright infringement. Now, ultimately, they did go and settle that, but still, though, whenever they want to try to go and take action and try to put more emphasis on, like, Christian values, they don't necessarily really care about the law. Or, on that note, they don't really even care much about the filmmakers themselves, because they've actually had a history of trying to screw over filmmakers and the people working on the projects that they made a deal with Angel Studios so that they can go and actually exploit them for their own personal gain. And one notable example is actually a recent animated movie that they put out is actually David, because there have been some copyright trouble where they wanted to go and screw over the company behind it, which I believe is Slingshot. And from there, they kept having, like, copyright troubles. They wanted to disassociate themselves with Angel Studios, but then eventually, of course, at the end, they did ultimately settle, which is why David was distributed by Angel Studios. But then there was also another project in which there was a lawsuit that happened, and Angel Studios ultimately got a big L on that one, which is the series The Chosen.
Roach's loves are messy cooking.
Best buffet in. Now, in the beginning of the 2010 decade, The Chosen was actually one of the biggest projects from Angel Studios. It was considered to be right up there with The Sound of Freedom as like one of the biggest names that helped propel Angel Studios up as the major company that we know today. However, during the time when they were working on season 4 or something like that, the people working on The Chosen decided to go and put up a lawsuit against Angel Studios because they want to completely disassociate with them, and they managed to do so. Now The Chosen has completely cut ties with Angel Studios, and now they're collaborating with Amazon in order to go and continue the series. So there have been times when their practices, they're able to go and work things out, but then they would end up screwing them over. But it really does highlight that their initial plans is to go and serve themselves more so than to actually go and help out the filmmakers who would go and create many of these Christian projects and stuff like that. So this is basically to go and highlight that with many of their business practices, and even with some of the things that they would go and distribute with stuff like Sound of Freedom or the Tuttle Twins or even Animal Farm, for example. Don't you think it's a little bit strange that a Christian company like Angel Studios would go and distribute a movie about Animal Farm? Like, you kind of wonder, like, what is it about the George Orwell novel? What does that have to do with Christianity or anything like that? Well, it highlights that Angel Studios is honestly a lot more of a conservative company than they are a Christian company. That basically, as I stated before, the Christianity aspect of it, the Christian image, is nothing more but a mask so that they could go and put out a lot of conservative propaganda, and some of which can be a little bit dangerous, where it can legitimately lean to some far-right propaganda, such as the case with Sound of Freedom, where it's about more spreading conspiracy theories, more so than to call out actual child trafficking that's going on in the world. Or there is also the Tuttle Twins, where they would go and spread propaganda to children about libertarianism. Or even with Animal Farm, like, I feel like the only reason why Angel Studios would have any interest in distributing an Animal Farm movie is because Animal Farm is possibly the most well-known anti-communism story. And in the case of Angel Studios, you know that they have a lot more bad-faced ideas about spreading anti-communism propaganda. Like, their definition is far more different than the historical context of what actually is communism. You know what I'm talking about. Basically, with Angel Studios, they would believe that communism is people of color having as much rights as whites, or marriage is not exclusively for heterosexuals, or whenever people would go and pray, it wouldn't be exclusively for Jesus. You know, the McCarthyism definition of what communism is. So that's why with Angel Studios, sure, they do put out a good amount of Christian media, but at the same time, I feel like they are far more categorized as a conservative company, more so than an actual Christian company. They're a lot more associated with something like The Daily Wire or Breitbart than anything like that, where their main goal feels like it's a lot more about not spreading Christianity, but more about spreading Christian nationalism, the more harmful kind of Christianity that actually causes a lot more problems than it actually does follow the words of Jesus Christ. And this is not even to mention, I tried looking up what is it about Angel Studios that they would do that is actually Christian than just preaching about the Bible and stuff like that through their media? Like, I tried to see if they would go and actually collaborate with nonprofit organizations, or if they have done some charity work and stuff like that. You know, basically to go and follow the words of Jesus and follow his leadership to go and actually help out others. And honestly, I haven't found much. Maybe there have been a few movies where they would go and collaborate with nonprofits in order to go and help out the causes based on the subject matter of the movie. Like, some people would probably go and argue that they have done that with The Sound of Freedom, where they would go and collaborate with nonprofits based on anti-child trafficking. But then again, however, considering The Sound of Freedom and the kind of movie that it is, where it's based more on conspiracy theories than to actually go and call out child trafficking, I wouldn't really trust them with that. But outside of that, though, no, there's not really much where they would go and show that with the millions of dollars that they would go and accumulate, you don't really see much of them that actually goes towards helping people, to actually go towards the good causes that actually does make Christianity useful. You don't see them helping out the poor and feeding them and giving them shelter. You don't see them giving immigrants sanctuary so that they can go and have a better life. And you don't really see them spreading any positive message that Jesus is very well known for spreading compassion, for spreading mercy, for spreading forgiveness, for spreading empathy, or anything like that. I mean, considering that they are more of a conservative company, they would probably look at those things and they would just consider it woke. So when I see Angel Studios, I have nothing against them if they want to portray themselves as a Christian company. But if they want to be a Christian company, they better prove it by actually doing some Christian things. Show that you're using your Christianity for good. Because if all you're doing is just spreading out media, that's just preaching. And preaching alone is not necessarily enough to show that what you are doing with your religion is good. If anything, I kind of feel like, honestly, with that Christian imagery, Angel Studios is kind of getting away with so much more than they honestly should. Because if you're going to go and try to, like, call out or even just criticize anything that would be Christian related, what happens is that it immediately gets deflected back, and there are some people who would go and say that you're anti-Christian for questioning what they would do, because any action related to doing so for Jesus or doing so for God would automatically be considered good, which, as we all know, is kind of false. So, yeah, I know that I am running the risk of criticizing Angel Studios and I'll be called out as anti-Christian of it, but I'm going to be honest with you all. People are already calling me that anyways. And since we're already on that subject, we might as well go and get into that. I might as well go and automatically address it, because this is something that I have actually seen been going around, where there have been a few people who tried to go and call me out as anti-Christian, because I've actually had my fair share of actually criticizing things that are considered to be Christian, or especially calling out conservative Christians whenever they would use their Christianity in the absolute wrong way. Now, at that point, this is honestly the one thing that I feel like whenever my friends, or when people who do know me, when they saw that people would go and say that I'm anti-Christian, it would get the biggest laugh out of them, because they know for a fact that it is not true. And I'll say right now, no, I am not against Christianity in general. I actually do have some Christian friends, and sometimes we would get into the subject of religion and we would discuss about Christianity in more positive ways. In fact, there's one friend in which they would regularly go to church, and we would talk about like how things been in church and what they learn and what are some of the lessons that they would teach, and they would even share videos me about those particular sermons, emphasizing about.
It's the cutter again, and the count is 0-2. Swing and a ball popped up. Caballero gets there. He's under it. Snags it for the second out. Next to hit, Scott Rowland.
They would learn and like what life lessons that they have gotten out of it. And I'm not going to lie, a lot of them are very fascinating. And I'll even add, just so you actually do learn a little bit about me, I was actually raised Catholic, and I've actually gone through some of those ceremonies where, yes, I actually did get confirmation, and as a baby, I was actually baptized. So, yes, I did actually have a little bit of history of being a Christian in my early years. However, as me and my family, we grew older, nothing against necessarily Christianity itself, but we've ultimately moved on from regularly going to church on Sundays, and we kind of just moved on to just being our own people, not necessarily associating our identities as Christians. And even I myself, I'll just say that I'm someone who would be considered as agnostic. Like, is there a God up there? Is there an afterlife? Maybe. I just don't know. Like, I'm someone who pretty much accepts that I don't know everything in the world, and maybe there can be some supernatural beings out there. Or
the man with the gavel. It's Aaron Judge. Here comes the pitch. Starts with a pair of sliders.
High outside.
That's strikeout number.
For the Yankees,
The Yankees
number
dip into their
75,
bullpen and hand the ball to Camilo Doval. He'll do his best to keep this a one-run game. Napoli stands in now and watches strike one. Off speed, out of the zone. Tough pitch to hit. Softly hit back behind third. Just inside the line, and it's down for a knock. Nick Castellanos approaches the box as a parallel four card. Fastball out of the zone. Tough pitch to hit. Ground ball with some heat to the hot corner. To second, that's one. Throw to first, but he beats it. Byron Buxton steps up with a chance to score the runner from second. We see a card rated 94 overall. And fouls it. The Democrats lead by a run. That makes it 0-2. What was that? Lifted in the air to center. Grisham on the move. Squeezes it. 2 gone now. And he won't go for third. Stays put at second with 2 away. A Tops Now series member steps in the box. Brandon Valenzuela. They're not, and maybe the runners are actually correct. I mean, either way, there's a lot of possibilities of what the ultimate outcome of life would be. It's just a matter of a wait and see. But that's just my personal take on it. But when it comes to religion in general, personally, I have nothing against people based on their religion alone. Like, if there is someone who identifies as a Christian, or if they identify as any other religion, as a Jew, a Buddhist, a Muslim, or anything like that, I'm perfectly fine with it. I mean, they're all pretty much, or anything like that, I'm perfectly fine with it. A Muslim,
or anything like that, I'm perfectly fine with it. I mean, they're all pretty much the same. And being a Christian is not so different than being anything else, honestly. It doesn't matter which God you would go and worship or anything like that. As long as you're using your religion to go and help yourself and you're not doing so in order to go and hurt others, then I'm perfectly cool with it. But that is the line where I would go and draw. When people would go and actually use their religion to actually go and hurt others, that's where I will go and actually criticize them for it, and I will criticize their religion. And that's why I have been openly critical towards the more conservative brand, or especially the more Trump brand of Christianity, because a lot of that is being used in order to enable supremacy, and for people to go and force others to tell them what to do, in order for them to go and say that everybody should do things my way. And this is not even to mention about the hate that they would go and enable, that they think that because they're Christians, it's okay to have prejudice and bigotry towards other groups, such as women or people of color, or even especially the LGBTQ plus community, which that does include trans people. And in that regards, that's where I say this is when religion is becoming pretty bad. That's when I would go and say, no, you are a bad person, and the way you use your religion is honestly bad. Because that's honestly the dark reality when it comes to Christianity that not many people are talking about. Because there are many, and I do mean many people out there who are only Christians because they just want to have the benefits of being a Christian than to actually believe in the stories of the Bible and Jesus and stuff like that. You know, there are basically people who think that because they're Christians, that they can shield themselves from any accountability or any criticism whatsoever. And this is especially prevalent, and it is the most obvious whenever you see wealthy people who have committed some serious crimes, and they try to use Christianity in order to go and try to avoid accountability, or try to put up that image of like, no, I'm actually a good person who can do nothing wrong. In case in point, take a look at people like Elon Musk or Russell Brand, or literally anybody in the Musk do nothing wrong. In case in point, take a look at people like Elon Musk or Russell Brand, or take a look at people like Elon Musk or Russell Brand, or literally anybody in the Trump administration. I think those are the biggest proofs of that. And the biggest reason why that's somehow still a thing is mainly because of the idea that all Christians are good people. This has been a thing that's been going on for centuries, where many people somehow believe that just because you have the Christian card, that immediately makes you a good person. That somehow the idea that all good people have to have a faith that they follow. And nowadays, we do know better where that's not necessarily true. Just because you're a Christian, that doesn't mean that you're a good person. That doesn't mean that you don't get any accountability for your actions. That doesn't mean that you're free from any consequences that may occur. And that is also the case where just because you're a Christian, that doesn't mean that you're better than anyone else. As long as you're using your Christianity to do some good, to actually help people instead of just hurting them, then in that regards, you're fine there. But if you're going to go and actually hurt others and think that you're better than others, no, that's when it's bad. And it's that brand of Christianity. What? Why is it that the religion is becoming less and less popular with new generations? Because it's becoming more obvious that that ideology of Christianity and that kind of Christian nationalism is what's really ruining that image, and why there are less people going into the church nowadays, because it doesn't actually have a use in our society. Like, that kind of Christian nationalism is more of a detriment that's actually harming people than it actually is doing good. It's just something that is so obviously filled with corruption and stuff like that. And this is not even to mention about any of the historical context where people would go and use Christianity for a lot of evil actions, and not to mention a lot of things that would technically be considered as sins or against the Ten Commandments and stuff like that, like death, war, greed, corruption, and all that kind of stuff. But to go back into the subject of Angel Studios, this is why, considering that they are more of a Christian nationalist company, more so than an actual Christian company, I feel like they are the mega church of the film industry, where they would go and be all flashy and they're all about the pizzazz of the stories of the Bible and go and present those tales in very extravagant ways, rather it be releasing stories about Jesus or David or any other religious figure, or telling stories about Christians and how they managed to go through their troubles through the power of faith, like really portraying them in big, major spectacle ways, but you don't really see them do much to go and provide to their communities, to go and actually help out people, to go and actually show what good the power of Christianity can actually go and do. In fact, what they do more so than anything is actually enable conservative conspiracies, and that they would go and distribute things that have nothing necessarily to do with Christianity, but it's about spreading propaganda that lean way more not just towards the right, but can go towards the far right, such as the case with stuff like Sound of Freedom or with Tuttle Twins, where at that point, with the kind of financial advice that they would give, you might as well go and tell kids to go and basically rely your finances by going into the casino on a regular basis. So that's why, honestly, I feel like with the way that they use Christianity as an obvious mask, there are some dark secrets that are going on within Angel Studios. And in that regards, that's why I'd rather want to go and completely separate myself, and I don't want to enable them in any way possible in case that something may come out about them where they're a lot more darker than what they may portray. Because the more they try to force out their imagery that they are good Christians, the more that it's pretty clear that who they actually are is.
U.S. Bank Business Banking using dedicated experts and tailored solutions that work together to result you more. Because we believe the most rewarding wins take a team effort. One of those. Your business and U.S. Bank together. That's the power of us.
On this second film, people were very, very generous.
Kind of the opposite. I mean, maybe I could be wrong, but with their conservatism, with the way that the Harmon brothers would go and enable Angel Studios and the kind of projects that they would release, and not to mention with their stance that I think it's safe to say that they are strong Trump supporters, even when Trump would go and do stupid things such as this, then in that regards, I'd rather want to go and completely separate myself from them altogether and just not talk about any of their projects. Now, by the way, I just want to go and put out a big disclaimer at this point. This is not me trying to tell you what to do, by the way. This is not me saying that you shouldn't be supporting this or we should go and take down Angel Studios or anything like that. If you want to go and watch the
Another trip to the gas station. That's a ball. That's a strikeout. Bednar feeling good after that pitch. Brandon Valenzuela shuffles into the box. Swings and sends a rocket to right. Pulls it down, and there are two away. Down to the final out here at Shea Stadium.
shot out of a cannon. What a time to deliver. Long gone home run. Perfect swing, perfect impact, perfect timing. Nolan Gorman up with the bases empty after the homer from the World Baseball Classic Series. Tough day at the plate for him. But I would blame the card if I were you. He rockets one deep, going back, but there's no catching this one. It's gone. He walks it off, and that's the game.